You're listening to Catholic Family Podcast, Episode 22.
Thanks for listening to the Catholic Family Podcast. I'm Kevin Davis, and I'm very happy and honored to be joined today by a new priest, a priest who was recently ordained in December by His Excellency Bishop Mark Pivarunas in Omaha. That priest is Father Carlos Zepeda. I hope I'm saying that correctly, Father. My Spanish skills are very, very poor. But Father joining us, I believe now from his station in Arkansas. And we want to talk a little bit today about Father's path to the priesthood, his path to, I believe, even state of incontism, and his experiences here in the first 6 months or so of his priestly life. So Father Zepeda, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
And Father, I guess the best place to start would be, I guess, at the beginning. I honestly don't really know your story at all. I listened to your sermon from your first Mass, which was very good, by the way. And my mother speaks very highly of you. You and I only met very briefly one time, I think now 5 or 6 years ago, when I was leaving America for Germany and you were just entering the seminary. So you and I barely know each other. Like I said, my mom speaks highly of you. So I would love to hear your story, honestly, Father, and how you came to realize you had a vocation to the priesthood.
Thank you. It's a really bit long story, I would say. So I hope we have time here.
We have time.
I guess I could say that my vocation was a little bit different than most priests in that I was sort of a convert. I was Catholic all my life. I grew up in the tradition, thanks be to God. My parents used to go to Mass at the Carmelites in Mexico. They were Sedevacantist. But the difference with me was that I really never was, when I was growing up, I went to public school. So my life was not what you would call a very pious person. I mean, I was a Catholic. I tried to be as good as I could. You know, I would go to confession regularly. I would go to Mass on Sundays, all that stuff, but I never really was one of those people that were attracted to the priesthood from the beginning, or seeking for those things from the beginning. I went to college. I was studying for an engineering in software developing, or development, I guess you could say. And I never really was. The only thing I remember when I was young, there were two things I guess that I could say maybe saved me. One was the fact that I would have a devotion to Our Blessed Mother. I would try to pray to her at least every day, something. And the other thing was that I would go to confession regularly. So the only thing I remember is that my brother seemed to have a vocation as well, and I seemed to have a vocation at some times. And I even remember one time I went to a priest, the Carmelite priest, and I told him, hey, maybe I have a vocation. And he said to me, what makes you think that? And I said, and this actually just came up to my mind now. I said to him, well, I feel like I would like to go be a missionary priest. And he said to me, oh, then you don't have a vocation, because there's nothing like that in here. So you don't have a vocation if you're being called to something like that.
Interesting. Okay.
Now that I think about it, it's pretty funny.
Interesting.
Anyways, that as I grew up, I remember telling our Lord, I'll go join the convent with the Carmelites if you call me. But only if you call me. Like, it had to be a really big call. I was hoping to see something like, this Blessed Sacrament flying towards me, or some angel appearing or something like that. I was like, otherwise I will not go. So long story short, well, that's not going to be possible, but, trying to summarizing, I went to college, and when I was going to college, I started going through this stage of trying to take my salvation more seriously. As everybody knows, college is a very dangerous place, a very difficult place. In Mexico, it's not as bad, because in Mexico, you don't live in college. So I was living with my parents, but you still have your friends and your classes and all that stuff. And as I started, I was close to graduation. I used to do college during the night and work during the day. And when I was coming close to graduating, I started taking my salvation more seriously. I was thinking of marriage, actually. And me and my mother started praying to try to figure out, what my vocation would be. And I must have been I was 22, 23 years old. And 3 signs came one after another that kind of, how would you say that, kicked me out of the horse, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
The first one was, at this time, of course, as I said, I was thinking actually of marriage, and there were some prospects around. And also at this time, I decided to apply at IBM for a job, and I got a job at IBM. I'm summarizing the story. If you want to hear like all the details, then you'll have to be, personal and one-on-one with the rest of the people, because it goes pretty long.
No, it's good. We have plenty of time, Father. No problem.
Yeah. So the first thing that happened, I remember, was I had a crucifix over my bed, and this was a Saint Benedict crucifix. And one time I was sleeping, and I woke up. The crucifix was moving. The cross was sliding on the wall, so to speak. Kind of like a pendulum movement, like a watch.
Okay. Yeah.
And so it was very loud, and it woke me up. And as I looked at it, I thought maybe I hit it with my hand or something. And then, I realized that both my hands were under the blanket, so that wasn't it. But I didn't give a lot of attention. I'm more of a skeptical. Do you say skeptical or skeptical?
Skeptic. Yeah.
Skeptic. I'm more of a skeptic person. So I said, okay, forget about it. Not a big deal. And then a couple months afterwards, another thing happened, and this was actually a funny one. I had, I had been working for a while, and I worked in a IT office, so it was pretty boring. Not boring, but it's an IT job, so you're always on an office sitting down. And I thought to myself, okay, I want to wake up in a happy mood, I would say a party mood at that time. So I picked a song for my cell phone, which is just to give an idea of how, I wasn't a very pious person. The name of the band was The Authentic Decadent People.
Okay.
And the name of the song is The Guitar. So you wouldn't expect anything pious to come out of this song. And I put that as my alarm clock, like my song for waking up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm waking up, and this is the lyrics. I'll have to translate, but it basically says, I had a problem with a difficult solution at a difficult time of my life. I didn't know what to do. I was between the sword and the wall. I had a problem. I didn't like the schedule of the office. My rebel spirit was laughing at money, luxury, and comfort. And I had a revelation. I know what I want to do with my life. I'm going to follow my vocation. So
okay.
those are the lyrics, like the beginning. And I woke up and I started listening to the lyrics and paying some special attention to it for some reason. And as it said, the part of, I'm going to follow my vocation, I look down and I see the same crucifix that was hanging over my wall. I see it in my arm. Like I don't know how to describe that on the radio, but I had my left arm, my left hand over my chest, and the crucifix was in between my arm and my chest.
Okay.
For some reason. So my thought there was, I thought it was my mom. So I go really angry with my mom, and I tell her, like, what are you doing? Putting the crucifix there and, trying to mess with my mind or whatever. And she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So that kind of scared me a little bit. And at that moment, during this time, when these things were happening, I was going through this process of trying to save my soul and trying to make steps towards living a better life. But still, I wasn't, what you would usually consider a normal priestly vocation. I wasn't like going to mass every day or anything like that. Hope I don't get in trouble for this recording and this podcast.
Why would you get in trouble? No, it's good.
Yeah. It's going to be like, how did he say that in there? No, just kidding. And the third thing was more intense. By the time the third sign came, there was more of a crisis going on in my life. I was, it was kind of like the last battle where our Blessed Mother was fighting on the one side and the devil on the other. But we were praying. I remember that this is a prayer that I hold very dear because of that, because I found my vocation. Me and my mother would be praying something called the 7 Sundays of St. Joseph, where you meditate upon the 7 sorrows and the 7 joys of St. Joseph, and you do that for 7 Sundays. And so that was our prayer for me to find actually a Catholic wife. That was the intention that we had. During these prayers, these things happening, the last one was, I started hearing, this lasted actually for several months before. I had been hearing in my mind the words, "There is a price for everything." And I would hear that in English. Okay. Now, when I say hearing, I don't mean that I was actually hearing like the voice, but it would just pop up in my mind at random times all throughout the day for like 4 months. If I remember correctly, I might be wrong on that, but that's kind of what I remember. So I'd be driving, there's a price for everything. I'd be eating, there's a price for everything. I'd be working, there's a price for everything. It would just keep coming and coming. And it actually started driving me crazy a little bit. I would actually call my friend, well, ask my friends, like, have you ever heard this? No, did you hear this in a movie maybe, or a song or anything? No. So I didn't know where it came from. And one day I was going to go on a trip with some of my friends from work. And I went to help one of the priests, the Carmelite superior, actually the superior of the Carmelites. I went to help him at the convent with some problem they had with their computer. And before I left, this is like 11 p.m. or so. And I tell him, can I would like to go to confession. I'm going on a trip tomorrow, in case something happens. And so, yeah, he said that's fine. So we went to I went to confession there, right there. He was just in the office, no confessional. He's just sitting in a chair and I'm kneeling by him. And I started going to confession with him. And the confession got pretty intense because when he found out that I was going out with my friends from the office, he thought that was, a dangerous situation. And if I really wanted to change my life, that wasn't the best thing to do. And I was like, well, I'm not doing anything wrong. We're just going on a trip. But he said, that's not the kind of stuff you want to do if you really want to change your life and you're trying to be a good Catholic. Because none of them were Catholic, obviously. Mm-hmm. Well, they were Catholic, but Novus Ordo Catholic, nothing to do. So we started, that kind of goes to say how much I wasn't a very pious person at the time. I actually started arguing with him. And it got pretty heated. He is a very strong priest, you could say, like a very strong will, very spirited. And in a certain way, I was saying this in a sermon a couple of weeks ago. Sometimes people don't want to go to confession to priests who are very strict. Mm-hmm. And in a certain way, I owe my vocation to that, to the fact that this priest was actually very, passionate and strict and he was strong. So anyways, we started arguing, and then at one point he said to me, I want you to listen to me very carefully, because from what I'm going to say might depend the salvation of your soul. And then he says to me, there is a price for everything. Huh. And at that moment, it was like that was the sign, like I realized that God was calling me. I realized there was no way back out of it, like there was no doubt. Because besides the coincidence, besides, one could say, well, that was just a coincidence. But inside, in my soul, I also kind of realized that for me, there was no other way to save my soul. So, I'll go into that later, but I started crying, obviously, I was like shocked, and I started just like sobbing, right out sobbing. And the priest kind of like, he didn't know what was going on. So he looked at me like, he actually told me, what's wrong with you? Because I was just like sobbing, like on the floor pretty much. And I started saying, I realized I have a vocation. I realized this is God calling me and blah, blah, blah. And I said all these things while I'm sobbing there. And the priest, he was very prudent. He said to me, Well, first, after I told him that, I said, but I wanted to get married and have children and blah, blah, blah. And he said, well, who says that you're not going to have children? And then I said, that's not what I meant, So he was very prudent, actually. He said, don't do anything, don't quit your job, don't make any moves, because this might be just a temporary thing. When you see someone being all passionate or moved very emotionally, usually you won't put a lot of trust, a lot of confidence into that, because he might just be an emotional person.
Sure.
So he kind of said that to me. He said, don't do anything, wait a couple of weeks or a couple of months. If that resolution remains, then go ahead. And I didn't obey. Actually, the following day, I was so sure. I was very, very sure. Like, if it had been just an opinion or something, then yeah, I should have waited. But in my case, in my particular case, I think it was something supernatural. I think there was no room for doubt.
Mm-hmm.
So the next day, I went and quit my job, and that was also kind of funny. Let me know if you have questions or you want me to stop. But
no,
the story
goes
goes long.
Keep going. Okay. Keep going.
I had just quit my job, my previous job, like probably 3 weeks, almost a month before, and I had just been hired by IBM. So I was working at an office of IBM in Mexico, and I was being trained by someone here in America. Mm-hmm. And I had been there for a month. So here I go, and I quit. I told them, I gotta quit and whatever, and they're like, what's the matter? You just came here a month. How can you quit? I mean, what didn't you like in a month? And I said to the guy, well, I'm joining a monastery. You're joining a what? He didn't know what it was or anything. So I quit there, and they actually had a meeting like the following day, saying like, there are some people that coming here and we're training them for a month and then they're quitting, for whatever. They were pretty mad about it, obviously.
Right.
The funniest thing was when I had to tell my mother. No one expected this in my family, like absolutely no one. I mean, I had a red Jeep, which I called Red Bull. I had a speaker in the back of my Jeep, like a huge amplifier, and I would be playing music all out loud. I'd have a drum kit in my room. At one time, I shaved my head. I had a goatee. I mean, this is not a priestly vocation. Everybody wanted my brother to become a priest, but no one thought I was ever going to become a priest. Funny. Wow. Anyways, when I quit my job and I go with my mom, and she says to me, well, why aren't you at work? And I said, well, I got to talk to you. And she's like, no, I'm busy right now. And I'm like, I got to talk to you. She's like, no, this and that. Mom, seriously, I got to talk to you. So if you're a child, you know what that's like.
Exactly.
So we went to this restaurant, and we're sitting there, and I told her, Mom, you know how you always say that you would rather see me dead than going to hell. And she said, well, that doesn't make any sense. It was more like seeing me dead than, committing a mortal sin, kind of like what Saint Blanche of Castile used to say. And she says, like, yeah. And I said to her, well, that's your wish has been granted. I'm going to die in a certain way, and I'm joining the convent. And she was just, shocked. Like she just glared at me, and she started crying, obviously. And I started crying. And the waiter comes over, and she looks at both of us, and she goes like, she just goes away. And we cried for like 5 minutes, and then I go, Mom, they're gonna think I'm telling you something else. We better stop right now.
Right.
Because at that time that would look really bad.
Right.
At that time people still cried when things were said. I won't go into that.
Right.
But anyways, crazy thing. There was a bunch of the crazy things that happened. My sister would never text me. She would never call me. She would never email me. Not because she didn't like me, but just because she was very busy. She had 5 children, and we were just like that. That day, she sent me an email, and she says in the email, like, I don't know why I felt I needed to send you this, and it was the life of Saint Gabriel of the Sorrowful Mother, who delayed to follow his vocation. He delayed several times. So she sent me that, and I'm like, why'd you send me that? And she's like, I don't know, I just felt like I needed to send it to you.
Wow.
So I told her, and I told a few people. I didn't tell many people because I didn't want to get into the drama. For me, it was a very sudden change. Going to the Carmelites is not like going to the seminary in Omaha.
Sure.
Because in the Carmelites, you don't get out.
Right.
You go to the convent, to the monastery, and you're locked in there, and you won't see anyone. So for us, for all of us involved, who we really didn't know much, excuse me, of the order, but we all had the idea, the concept that you're going in there and you're dying, like we'll never see you again. So I didn't tell many people. The problem was telling my father. I wasn't sure about that one. I mentioned this in the sermon because it's a big deal. I mean, I had been in college for 3 years or so. My dad had been paying college. I had a scholarship because he was a teacher there. So we had a scholarship, and it was a lot cheaper than in America. It's not as expensive as it's in here, but still you're paying for college. And it was 4 months for graduation. So if it had been me, if it had been my son, I would have said, wait, graduate. It's 4 months, so graduate. Mature about the situation, about this decision that you're making, and then go ahead and do it. But it's just 4 months. I didn't want to do that because I knew how weak I was. As I said, I was kind of like already in the crisis to save my soul. So I figured, if I wait, if I graduate, and I have this really good job, it's going to be very dangerous. I won't be able to take that maybe, because for being in Mexico, I was making good money. If you think about America, it is maybe nothing, but for being in Mexico, that's a really good job. It's like above average. So me and my mom were really worried about telling my dad. We got together and we said, let's go to this restaurant that we really like. Excuse me. And we brought him there. And he was very nervous too, because when he saw that it was me and my mom talking to him, it kind of seemed like an intervention for something. Or, I don't know.
Okay. Right. I'm in trouble.
So,
right.
Yeah. Or he's in trouble.
Right, exactly.
So we were there, and he just sat down like, what's going on? And I said it to him kind of the same way that I told my mom. And my father is he's a very good dad. I mean, I'm really thankful with both my parents, because I'm really honored of having been blessed with them. But he's what you would call a very typical Mexican in regards to the feelings, the passion that he puts for everything. He's not violent. I don't think he's violent, but he is very strong. And so I was expecting at least, like a little bit of a raising of the voice or something. So when I told him that, he just goes silent and he just puts his head down, and I see a tear, just one tear coming down. And then he says, well, if that's God's will, so be it. And me and my mom could not believe it. We could not believe it. I was like, there is no way, this is not happening. We couldn't believe it. So what else happened there? Well, there was a couple more instances where one of the members of my family wasn't too happy about it, but I think it might have been just, the pain of the separation, perhaps. And another funny thing that happened was that the priest, the superior of the Carmelites, once I told him that I had quit my job and that I was going, for sure, he said to me, well, now the devil's going to tempt you, just like he told our Lord, if you bow down and adore me, I'll give you all this. That's what's going to happen to you now. Everyone's going to want to be your friend. Everybody's going to want to give you money. You're going to get these beautiful job offers. This and that person are going to come and call you and whatever. So I was expecting that, and I think our Lord knew that I was very weak because I didn't get any of that, like nothing at all. Just one instance, but like when I went to quit my job, that was, they didn't really care too much, I guess, but other than getting mad at it. When I went to the university to quit, I went to the coordinator of my career and I'm telling her, and she's like, "Whoa, that's so great. I'm so happy for you," and whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, you're supposed to be telling me not to do it. You know what? I mean, I'm not paying you guys anymore. You realize that. And she was like, no, that's great. I'm so happy that you found your vocation and blah, blah, blah. Most people in Mexico are Catholic. So for most people, actually, it would make sense.
But you don't have too many Carmelite convents or something. That's fairly unusual, I would assume.
Oh, yeah.
Even in Mexico. Yeah.
Well, and most people are Catholic by name. It's kind of like a heritage type of deal. But practicing Catholics are very few, and the ones that are practicing are no sordo, like deep no sordo.
Okay, yeah.
So one of my teachers actually said to me, like, "Oh, let me go and introduce you to my prayer group. I want to brag about it." And it was like no one at all tempted me against it. Everybody was helping me.
Wow.
My mother wanted me to go more than I wanted to go. She was like,
pray for me.
Bibles.
Okay.
Yeah, she was like getting Bibles and books ready for me and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, just give me 1 second. Okay. For me, it's kind of interesting, I think, because for me, it was a very different experience that for many people. I've seen in the seminary, we have very good seminarians. A lot of the priests that are ordained now were seminarians with me. Not a lot, but, a few of them. But most of them were really good people. They were really good kids who were always pious, who wanted to be a priest all their life. And for them, joining the seminary was kind of a dream. It was like, I really want to do this. I'm so happy about it. I really want to go. For me, it was the experience before the monastery was very, very different. It was a kind of a renunciation. Mm-hmm. Like I was given something that I wanted to go and do something that God wanted me to do. I wasn't like, super attracted to the idea, like, because you got to realize I was a worldly person. So I was used, to give an example, I was used to drinking Coke all the time. And now I'm being told to drink actual water, which is better for me. Right. But I'm not used to that. I'm used to drinking this junk. So that was kind of my situation. And for me, like the thought of going to the monastery and the moment, up to the moment where I actually got into the monastery for real, it was hard. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I realized there's no other way to save my soul. That was, for me, it wasn't about becoming a priest. It wasn't about becoming a Carmelite. It was just, there is no other way for me. If I want to save my soul, this is the only way. So,
and did you start your training to become a priest in Mexico already?
Yes and no. The Carmelites have a very different way when it comes to the training for the priesthood than the bishop does. Mm-hmm. If in case anyone doesn't know, the Carmelites are, as I said, sedevacantists, and it's actually Bishop Pivaronas that goes down there to give the orders. That's how I met them. I met Bishop Pivaronas and Father Gerard Maki. He was the one that would go there most of the times. But in the Carmelites, the thing is, you join to become a religious, and it's the decision of the superior whether you become a priest or not, or when you become a priest or not. Mm-hmm. And they take a long time. They take a lot longer than the bishop does, more than 10 years. Wow. So the first, but I don't complain about that, like, necessarily, but I wouldn't get into that here, but it was very beautiful for me. The experience of being a monk was really, really nice, in especially for that change, that moment of conversion where you abandon the world and the whole world is behind, and especially in a monastery is very different from the seminary in regards that you actually get to be totally separated from everything. Sure. As a priest, you can't do that. As a priest, you really need to be exposed to some extent, and that's why in the seminary you need that.
Right.
As a Carmelite, the Carmelite vocation the Carmelite vocation is planned so that you never are exposed anymore, or at least not that much at all. So like the first 3 years of my life were as a Carmelite was taking care of the garden, taking care of the compost, praying, reading a lot, being silent most of the time. All kinds of. It's a very simple life, very beautiful life, and very prone for enjoying the spiritual things. There is pros and cons, obviously. Every vocation has its crosses, but so in there you wouldn't begin the priestly training until 3 years after you join there, and then you begin classes, but then you have to wait until you get the final vows. They have 3 years of novitiate, then 3 years of temporal vows, then another 3 years of temporal vows, and so after 9 years, that's when you will make your final vows.
Okay.
And after that, there is even more years of training and waiting sometimes for the priesthood. So that wasn't a big deal for me. I mean, I wasn't really aiming at the priesthood. I was just, doing what they told me to do because I was happy being a Carmelite. It was. I guess I should go now into how I came to Omaha.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I'm really curious to how you made that change from a Carmelite convent in Guadalajara to Omaha. It's a big change.
Yeah, that was actually a big change and kind of violent too, because I came from being, secluded in my monastery, all silent and everything. And my first week in Omaha, that's when I met you.
Okay.
I got to Omaha, I think like 2 days before you left, because you probably remember we were practicing for Father Gecko's ordination.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Yeah, that's
the big choir.
You, and I remember
Okay.
Yeah. I remember coming to Omaha and going to those practices, and we were used to singing like five guys, with no musical training, not very good at all. And then I come over to Omaha and we're singing in the seminary, and there's Father Gecko, there's Father Philip, there's you, there's Father Sanquist, there's all these good singers singing Sicut Cervus and If You Love Me.
Yeah, I remember.
And I'm like, these guys are a really good choir. Okay, I was like, wow. And then that was the week also of boys camp. So it's like my first 2 weeks visiting here is like I went from, contemplative life to super, super active life.
That's Omaha.
It was graduation. Yeah. Graduations, ordinations, boys camp. It was just like crazy. But the way that happened was when I was at the Carmelites, I frequently, I have to say that it's true, I was very happy with my vocation, and I love that vocation. I still consider myself, at least at heart, the brother and they are my brothers and they are my sisters, the Carmelites over there, really. And I still consider myself, at least in spirit, sharing of their blessings. But when I was there, I frequently had the idea or the thought that I kind of needed to be somewhere else. Something that really got me was the need that there is out there for priests and for action. I think it's very important to understand the two sides. The Carmelites focus on the contemplative side, the prayer part, and I think that is very, very important. It's actually, I would say, the most important part. Action is also important, and action has to be together with prayer. You have to have both, otherwise they don't work. If you just do action, it's kind of like an empty thing, an empty shell, and you need grace. A lot of times, I think the big graces that we see, like my conversion, my own experience, I think it was due to prayers of people. Or of the Carmelites, actually.
Exactly. I mean, I think you see. I've talked about this in other shows that that there is a real, true spiritual battle going on around us between good and evil, and I think that those prayers, especially of the contemplative brothers and sisters, I think they have held together probably for centuries. I think our world. I think really you had who knows how many catastrophes and especially souls that were saved due to the prayers simply from these contemplative people that yeah, as you say, there are far too few of them today, far too few people spending their lives in prayer. But as you also say, we do definitely need people to go out there and do the work as well.
Yeah. Well, and I'm convinced that is true. I mean, Guadalajara, the city where they are at, it's kind of like an LA, like LA city.
Okay.
It's there's a lot of bad stuff in there. It's a huge city, a lot of those bad movements that we see today going on the world. They're very strong in there. And I think the only reason why that city hasn't blown up or been swallowed by the ground is because there are these people praying in there. And the same thing goes for America. I mean, there are so many people here in America praying and doing penance too.
Right.
Offering sacrifices. I've been so surprised. I'm jumping here a little bit of the topic, but I've been so surprised of finding, in parishes here and there, people that are, doing penance and praying and even a lot of times, lay people, that they are definitely helping. I'm sure that does a lot. We all have to be humble, we all have to realize we're really nothing unless God help us. But, in doing our job and doing what we can, I think there's a lot of good being done by people who pray and do penance. And I was going to mention something interesting in that regards. The Carmelites, they do a spiritual retreat every year. That's when they usually get, vocations. That's when people usually discover their vocations or change their lives. Mm-hmm. So they do this spiritual retreat. Is like they'll rent a house and they'll put people there for a week, and then they do like talks and all that stuff. And at the end of the week, usually you have to make an important decision whether to change your life or whatever. And we hadn't done this for like 4 years. And so one year, Father Superior came and told us, we're going to do a spiritual retreat. Well, that week, we all got the dengue virus. Is that how you say it, dengue? Or
I think
dengue?
So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like the mosquito one. All of us, the brothers and sisters, got it. I got it 3 times. Other guys had it like 2 times as well. We had an accident at the house. The Father Superior that was preaching the retreat, he fell the first day and he broke his arm in the house. The cross in the top of our convent, storm threw down the cross. The sisters, one of the pots that they were using to cook, blew up and burned some of their arms. It just goes to show that suffering does bring graces. We were like, man, we're going to get like 7 priests out of this retreat or something. I don't know.
Well, and I mean, you see, I mean, who knows what the devil is out there really trying to do to stop these vocations, right? I mean, to really gum things up and to mess things up. I mean, I think people underestimate that spiritual battle that I think it can turn physical, and it really can turn into this real, honest to goodness battle between good and evil. And I think, as you mentioned before, I think that people, I mean, we're all part of the body of the church, and really everything we do as prayer and sacrifice and everything we do in bad as well is all part of this entire body. I think it's a kind of a scary thought, but I think it's a beautiful thought too.
Yeah, it is, because here's the thing, like a lot of people think, if bad things are happening, that means that God is not pleased with us. But if you look at the lives of the saints, that's exactly what happened. Whenever there was something very good that they were doing or something very good that was about to happen, God would permit the devil to do something, to disrupt things a little bit, or to maybe even that, like cause accidents or stuff, because suffering brings graces.
Right.
So the devil's doing that to bother you, but God is saying, well, yeah, you go and do that, bother them, but that way they're going to get more graces and they're going to do this even better. Right. They're going to be more humble about it, or they're going to be more ready to take the cross of it. Saint Teresa of Avila, that's a big example, but we'll go into that maybe later on. Basically what happened then was that I had this idea of maybe I needed to be somewhere else. There were also some disagreements, not terribly, not like I wouldn't say essential, but I did speak my mind whenever something didn't seem right or whatever. And the Carmelites are great. I mean, they're a very good congregation. I kind of felt that we needed to be a little bit more out there without without betraying the vocation. But to me, it was a big deal that in Mexico, there's not a lot of priests. There's not a lot of priests. There's not a lot of missions. And that was kind of something that I would voice sometimes, particularly, just like to the superior. So he kind of realized that, I had this thing going on, and he talked to the bishop, and bishop agreed to have me here in Omaha. And we still delayed, like several months or weeks. I can't remember exactly how much, because I didn't want to switch unless I knew for sure that it was God's will. So whenever I felt or thought that I needed to be somewhere else, I would always say to my spiritual director, what does God want me to do? That's what I feel like, that's what I want to do. But what does God want me to do? I mean, if you tell me to stay, I'm going to stay. Whatever you tell me to do, that's what I'm going to do. Because one thing that in spiritual life is very important is never to judge things with your own mind. You always have to have someone else to guide you. So most of the times he was, you should stay here, you should stay here. And finally, it kind of came out that it seemed that God wanted me somewhere else. And so it was more of a decision of the superior, when he kind of said, okay, well, I think you should be there. And he talked to the bishop. And then, as I said, we still waited a little bit more. Then after a while, it became clear. And I ended up coming here to Omaha very, as I said, in a very drastic change, from the contemplative life to the active life. But it was very nice. Omaha was quite a good experience.
Okay, so it didn't obviously shock you out of the vocation or anything. And obviously you stayed the course, even though that I can only imagine. I've never been to Mexico, but I've lived in Omaha for five or 6 years, and so I totally understand the chaos that is Omaha. Yeah. It's a beautiful chaos. I love the chaos. I dearly love Omaha, but it is very chaotic. And so you really went from really to really an entirely opposite way of learning to be a religious, I suppose. And that must have been pretty shocking. I can only imagine. Wow.
Yeah, it was super active. I mean, and it's still super active, and that's a really good thing. There were so many things in there that I saw that were kind of a shock for me. For example, this is something that would be good to bring here maybe. In Mexico, there was one thing in the parish where they would say, like, we hardly ever got to talk. As a young person, you would hardly ever get to talk to people of the other sex. So if you're a guy, you would never ever get to talk to the ladies, and vice versa. I'm talking about never. So it's not like it was, it's not like they would put walls or anything behind, but it's like nothing was done to foster that. Usually as a young person, you don't go and do that by yourself. You need something to happen. You need some event or some dinner or whatever. And it was actually kind of, frowned upon, obviously. And this is something that actually happens in several parishes, not of the CMRI to my knowledge, but from other groups. I had a complaint from one of my relatives about an SSPX parish, and sorry if I said the name, but it's a fact. And he would say that they were not allowed to talk to each other until after high school, or even sometimes not then. And he's like, and then they expect us to marry. It's like, how are you going to marry someone? You don't even know how to talk to them.
Right.
And that's kind of what happened there. I mean, all the time that I was there, I don't remember not even one Catholic marriage. I remember people being married with people from outside. But like a Catholic with Catholic, I'm sure there must have been some. I can't remember any in 25 years that I was there. And when I came to Omaha, and I kind of started seeing these differences, and my first thought was, this is interesting. What's happening here? I wasn't being judgmental, really, but I was like, this is interesting, because that's kind of what I was thinking when I was back in Mexico. It's like some things need to be done. And in Omaha, just for the 6 years I was there, I think, no, 4 years, I must have seen 10, 12, I think, marriages of Catholics with Catholics, and that's huge. That is very, very huge. And that's kind of why it's such a chaos, we could say, or more, why it's so busy, because you're trying to provide all these things. You're trying to provide a Catholic school, social events, a seminary, a parish life, and that is something that requires a huge amount of work.
Oh, it's absolutely true. And for anyone who's seen His Excellency Bishop Pavernus, I mean, he is always going and always solving issues and putting out fires and making decisions. And I mean, he's an incredible person. I mean, truly. I mean, he never stops. I don't know if he sleeps. I mean, if he sleeps, it's very little. I mean, he just goes, and it's the amount of things that he does is, and he's running obviously his own parish. He's making many decisions for priests and parishes around the world. And then he goes and teaches the seminary in high school. And then every now and then he would go out and play football with us, after school. It's an amazing thing, truly amazing. It's great to see.
Yeah. I remember when I was in Mexico and I was in this process of moving to Omaha, Father Gerard McKee told me to call the seminary or to call Omaha. So he gave me the phone number, the regular phone number, the phone number for the school. And I called. This is on a Sunday. And I call and I'm thinking I'm gonna get answers. At that time, I had the idea of Omaha as of the Mount St. Michael's.
Mm-hmm.
So I was picturing this huge facility, with like revolving doors, glass revolving doors, and the secretary over here, and like 3 departments for each stuff or whatever. And so I call Omaha and I'm like, oh, can I talk to the bishop? Yeah, this is the bishop. And I'm like, what do I say?
Right.
It was pretty amazing. I mean, I was like shocked, and I just told him, well, I'm going to Omaha, but whatever. And he's like, oh yeah, sure. That was quite a shocker. And there are many things that we really need to appreciate. I think it's hard. There's something that happens, and it's very common. And I can say that because I've experienced it repeatedly. How when you are doing something good and when you are somewhere good, it's very common for the devil to try to get you out of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the greener grass temptation, we could say. Right. Where, they do this better here, they do that better there. And that's very common. And the thing is, we really need to appreciate what we have. I mean, we have such big blessings. And of course, there's going to be things that are not perfect because that's the world we live in. It's funny for me because sometimes as a seminarian or a religious, some people might get the idea, well, we're not praying enough, we're not doing this or that. And it's like, I was in the Carmelites and I had that. I'd be thinking like, oh, we should do this, we should do more, we should do this, we should do that. It's like, it's a common temptation when you're doing something good to think that the grass is greener somewhere else. And that's
so true. Yeah.
There are so many blessings we have, like, and it happens in parishes too. You might have a parish that is, perhaps small, or a parish where there's this or that you would want to be different, but you have a parish, and that's a huge thing. And, just take what you have, take the good thing that you have and work with it, because that's the best. And that's what that's one of the first things I remember Bishop saying, because when I came to Omaha, the first couple of days were kind of depressing for me. Because it was a very big change. As I said, I was struggling with the language. I was struggling with the timidity as well. It's like I'm not used to doing any physical activity. Well, we would do a lot of physical activity actually as Carmelites, but not sports.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at the time, Father Augustine was there as well. And every day it was like, we're gonna recreate this and that, and I'd be like, leave me alone. I feel like really tired or just not wanting to do sports. I mean, I was in this process of adaptation. And I remember one day I went down, like this was like the second day I was there. I went out with the bishop and I just talked to him and I asked him like, do you think this was the right thing to do? And he said, it's very different, huh? And I'm like, yeah. And he said, well, just, stay here as long as you want and see how you feel or something like that. And it was difficult, but then little by little we were able to adapt, and I'm very thankful to that reception, that approach of the bishop, to be so kind to us and give us all these opportunities.
And so what was something that helped you get through that? So how, actually, I guess the first question would be, how long were you in the seminary in Omaha? And then I guess the second question would be, how did you get through that? I mean, what was obviously, I guess the grace of God, but what were some things that helped you to continue on in a different country?
I was there for 4 years. I actually ended up adapting fairly quickly. There were several things that helped me. The years, I think, for every priest and perhaps every consecrated person, sisters or religious brothers, there are many challenges, especially in the first years. And there were several things that helped me. One was obviously, the first one I would say was Father Borja. He was my spiritual director, and he had to suffer me going over to his room and knocking on the door and telling him the same old things every time. Sometimes he would say like, okay, I know what you're going to say, like it was like the exact same thing every time. And that's something, that needs to be insisted also if there are religious or seminarians listening to this. You need a spiritual director. That is huge. You need someone. I don't know if you're familiar with. Oh man, the podcast is taking a long time. Well,
that's no worries, Father. No worries. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if you heard the story about Odysseus and the Sirens.
Or something like that. Remind me. Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't tell you exactly. No.
So it was this Greek hero who is he's sailing with his sailors. He's coming back from Troy, and they were going to run into the Sirens, these mythological creatures, and they sang very beautifully, but the problem is that if you heard their singing, you would go over there, and then they would eat you. That was the myth. And so what he does is he ties himself to the mast of the ship, and he tells his sailors, tie me over, and if I say, unleash me, tie me even stronger. And all the sailors covered their ears. He was the only one that was able to listen to them. And of course, he would be yelling, let me go, let me go. And they would come over and tie him up even stronger. So that's kind of what you need for a spiritual director. There comes a point where you go like, oh, this is too hard, I can't do it, or something like that. And you need someone to tell you, no, hold in there. That's not God's will. God's will is for you to hold on and to keep going. And a lot of times, as soon as you go and talk to your spiritual director, as soon as you go talk to the confessor, you'll feel better. That just takes everything off your shoulder. That was one thing that helped. The other thing that helped a lot was seminarians, asking me to recreate or trying to foster activities, with one another. That was a big deal for me too. And another big deal was, as I said in the sermon, the border boys and the kids from the school. Because I can't tell you how many times, you kind of feel, you lose perspective, perhaps, of how important it is to do what you do, or you even just feel down. And then you would come home to the border house, or you would come to the school or something, and you would see these kids running around and, laughing, or you would see these kids and you would see that you were able to make a difference here or there in this little spot, but that made a difference, and that was God's grace through you. And many times also, they would be the ones that would cheer you up or that kind of make life more fun and different. So something funny I should mention right now, it's kind of funny. Well, I'm not in Omaha anymore, obviously, so I'm not with the border boys anymore. But the parish where I'm at, apparently a lot of border boys are moving over here. Not really? For me, for Father Gecko.
Okay.
Yeah, it's for Father Gecko, but it's just funny how that's following me now.
That's great. And so boys, you mean boys who have graduated high school, they're coming to Arkansas afterward. Okay, yeah. Oh, that's nice.
It's a plan. It's still on the thinking, but
okay.
It might happen. And another thing was, of course, the bishop. That was also a big deal.
Yeah, there's something about Omaha that I first went to Omaha in 2013, I think, or 2012, and as a 15-year-old sophomore in high school, and then I haven't been for the last few years, but even when I go back now, the last few times I've gone back, it's still it's different, and things change, and people leave, and new people come, but it's still there's something very I don't even know, simple or good about it. I truly love it. It's even though I live now in Germany, I've lived in Denver, all over the place. Omaha still really is in many ways my home, and it's kind of my spiritual home in so many ways. And I think that I really believe many people who've been there feel the same way. And I think a lot of it, I'm sure, is the bishop. I'm sure it's just the experience of having been able to live around seminarians and sisters and brothers and priests and the bishop. And as you said before, you cannot take that for granted, or you should not take that for granted. I think that anyone who lives in Omaha, who has any experience there, I truly hope they appreciate it, because it really helps shape you. I mean, anything that I am now that is good, a lot of it comes from my parents. There's not much good in me, but a lot was my parents, but so much comes from that experience in Omaha and the friendships that I had with the religious. And I think that I hope that people who have that in their parishes with good priests and good nuns and good brothers, boy, I hope they know what they have, because it could be gone in an instant. And I think that we need to value that more than we do.
Yeah, for sure. And I was talking about this, actually. That was my sermon last Sunday. Last Sunday was the Good Shepherd Sunday, and I actually made my sermon about the idea of the Catholic bishop. And I think a lot of the difference in Omaha is the fact that we have a Catholic bishop there. Mm-hmm. People think a lot of times, of the church as or of the church nowadays as isolated groups, with this isolated bishop or this isolated priest. And the fact is that the bishop is our spiritual father. So there is a difference. There is an authority that he has, and that the fact that he's there, I think, is why there's all these things going on around him. It means a lot of work. It means a lot of trouble, obviously, because he's like the general, so to speak. So there's going to be a lot of trouble around him. But I think that's something that makes a lot of difference. The fact that we do have a spiritual father, and there's a person there that is the source, so to speak, of the church. Not him in particular. I'm saying a bishop, a Catholic bishop. Like you have the Pope, you have the bishops, and they are the source where we get all these blessings from. Because they are the representatives of Christ, and that's something that has been lost a lot in this day because of all the stuff that has gone on. We have lost that concept of the bishop being the spiritual father, the pastor, the shepherd of the flock, who has an authority and who is actually a source of many blessings, and that's just what it is. I think that's the reason for Omaha. When he came there was nothing there. Omaha was like any other mission parish. There was 10, 12 people maybe. And the fact why it grew like it grew is because the bishop was there. So, yeah, that's something we should be very thankful for. And also we should, and I'm not saying this because I'm trying to get anything from the bishop. I'm not trying to get a good position or anything like that. It's just true. And I hope we persevere. I hope I persevere in being a good priest. Well, I'm not saying I'm a good priest, but I hope I persevere in being obedient to the bishop and helping him out as much as I can. And I hope we all do. We all need to support him and to show him also our obedience and respect in that regards, because that is our shepherd, our pastor, and that's something that has been lost. And I think that's why we see all these good things in Omaha.
I definitely agree, Father. Yeah, perfect. And I think before we go, Father, I would like to get at least a brief description from you, first of all, about your actual ordination day and maybe your first Mass, and then a little bit about your first few months of being a priest. And I got to live stream your Mass. It was really beautiful. I hope that anyone listening to these podcasts, I think you can go and find all three of the first Masses as well as the ordination online. I think on YouTube, it's several different websites. I know Father Abrahamovich from Italy live streamed all of them. And it was really neat for me to be able to watch, even here in Germany, be able to see the different sermons and the different music. I thought was really fascinating. If I remember right, Father, you had a men's choir singing only Gregorian chant. Is that right? For your first solemn Mass?
No, that was Father Weissensteiner.
Okay. So what was your Mass then, Father? I don't remember then.
Mine was it was a choir with the sisters and the seminarians. That would call for like another hour of a show, but yeah, but it was really good. It was was beautiful. The first thing is, we were supposed to have our masses and ordinations in different countries. So Father Weissensteiner was supposed to have his in Austria. I was supposed to have mine in Mexico. We had already made plans for it. And, Father Maguire was supposed to have his in America. So this stupid COVID thing happened. That's the official name, by the way. Now everyone calls it that, so that's the official name. I hope we don't get censored for this.
Yeah, right. I hope not too, right?
Yeah, just bleep it over there.
Exactly.
Put a bleep. So it ended up happening that we all had the masses together, and we all had the masses also at the same parish, because we all struggled with the choir part and all that stuff. So this is something that never happens in Omaha. Usually you have one priest go to one parish and another to another parish. But here, because of the day where it was and the choir problem and all that stuff, it ended up being that we would have four solemn high masses in Omaha, one after another. And then each priest served one another. So I was a deacon and a subdeacon for the other masses, and like that with everyone. And then for my choir, I gave them the music like long in advance, but we never had a chance to practice together. So there was one practice together with me that I can remember, and then that was it. I think maybe another one. But so there were two practices together with the choir. So they just showed up to Mass, and it was like, let's hope this works.
Wow.
And it went really beautiful. We're about to get the CD out.
Okay.
The CD has not the three masses. Oh, that was very unfortunate. Your brother probably doesn't like me a lot for this, but it wasn't my fault. No, just kidding. We were recording Father Maguire's Mass. His was the first one, and we were recording that one, and the hard drive got filled halfway through the Mass.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it only recorded half of it. And then the next one was mine, and obviously that problem was solved. So mine was recorded full Mass, very conveniently. And then we recorded Father Weissensteiner's as well. And his was the one that had all Gregorian. Okay. And he's also had some of the seminarians were from Austria, and they knew how to play the trumpets and the organ, so they played the trumpets at the organ. And it was just beautiful. I mean, by the end of it, we were all kind of like in heaven. And I remember there was one person, I won't say who, but the last day, I walk into a room and I see this person just sobbing, like crying, totally. And I thought, oh man, someone died or something happened. And then I go on and I tell this person, like, what's going on? And nothing. I'm just so happy.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, well, it was just really neat, because none of us would have had the choir and the people and everything. And it was very nice to have the people as well, the parish people who were always so interested in us and helping out with the ordination. I remember one small detail from my first Mass. I'm sure everybody shared the same thing. If you look, I was looking at the pictures the other day, the pictures for their first Masses, and we all have this face that is, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a scared face. All of the priests, we're all looking like, oh, what's going on? Because it's just so beyond you. Sure. I remember like the probably like the 6 or 7 days before my actual first Mass, I would not sleep. Like I was waking up like at 3 a.m. in the morning, and I would go to bed and I would think to myself, I need to sleep. I really need to sleep. I'm going to sleep tonight. Nothing. 3 a.m. in the morning, I wake up. And if you look at the pictures, you can see in the face. And I think probably the same thing happened to the other ones, because you can also see, bags under their eyes and this, worn down face. But, we were happy about it. But it's such a, I don't know how to say the proper word in English. Maybe it's such an incredible, huge experience, and something so overwhelming.
Sure.
I remember my first Mass, my very first Mass, because I had a first Mass that wasn't the Solemn High was, and the Solemn High Mass was a day after, but my first Mass was a low Mass on Sunday. And I remember when there's a moment after the consecration where the priest, you put the chalice on the altar, and then you put the pall on the chalice. And I took the pole, and my hand was shaking. You could see the pole like flapping around
No.
as I'm as I'm trying to put it on the chalice. Like I was just so, and it wasn't nervousness from the mass, or from the people or anything like that. It was nervousness, or more, like a shock of what you're doing, of how huge it is what you're doing, and I just couldn't help it. It wasn't like bad nervousness, where you're worried.
Sure. Right.
It was more of a really overwhelming experience.
Wow. And so were you kind of floating on a cloud for some time after your ordination and after your first few masses?
Yes and no. Something that I'm very emotional, I must say, as you can probably tell from this whole conversation, or somewhat emotional, I should say. And I was afraid that I was maybe going to cry during ordinations or the first mass, and it did come up a little bit, but thankfully, because of all the lack of sleep, I was kind of, have gone. My faculties were not fully there. So I think that stopped a lot of the feeling part of it. But for sure, that was a lot. Like the first mass, I remember, was a huge deal, like for everyone, and especially the fact that you were serving with the other priests.
Mm-hmm.
That was a huge deal for us.
Sure.
I remember the third day that we were having mass in Omaha, Father Weissensteiner comes over to me and he says, "Father, do you want to use my chalice?" And I'm like, "Oh, never heard of that before," And he's like, "It's like a sign of friendship, we share each other's chalice."
Okay.
Like, oh, okay, all right. And so we did that, and we traded with Father Maguire as well for a couple masses.
Okay.
The chalices was a whole other story. My chalice and my chasuble didn't make it to Omaha until like a few days before ordination with my mom.
Uh-huh.
And it was very close. We were very close to not have them there. And Father Weissensteiner, he had his chalice in Germany, and he didn't bring it with him because he didn't want. I don't think he was ready actually. And he got it the day before his solemn high mass.
Wow.
He didn't have it there for ordinations, but the day before, or like 2 days before, I think it was the day before, we see this package come in, and he was like happy. It's really nice to see them when they get happy, the priests.
Sure.
They'll be like, super happy, and it was just very nice. Don't know how to describe it without the mimicking. I'm a mimicking person, so I need to.
All right. I know. Unfortunately, I know Father Weisenstein, and I actually get to see him in I think a week. He's coming to our parish, which is really, really great. I really, really love him a lot. But so I can picture. I can picture his face. Oh, I'm going to share the entire show with him. I actually want to do. I definitely want to do. I want to do a show with him too, because I think he also must have a very good story and.
Oh yeah, he does.
And I enjoy him so much. I really, really like him a lot, and I hope that I can have him on too.
Yeah.
But I guess, Father, to end, I mean, tell me a little bit about where you are now, and I guess your first few months being a priest. I mean, how has that been? Has it been overwhelming, or are you settling in fairly well?
I think it is going okay. I've had several blessings. I would say the first one was. I had the blessing to come here with Father Gecko. That's very nice to be with another priest. Mm-hmm. He's always been very kind to me. I've always been thankful with him as well, because he was the first one that allowed me to go on. When I was just a seminarian, and a seminarian with a Mexican accent to that, he brought me to his parish to teach catechism there, and I was very thankful for that.
Yeah.
And several times he did that. He always supported me as well. He always kind of cheered me up, together with Father Borja. So I'm very thankful to have the ability to be with another priest. Another thing that I've been very blessed with is the people in the parish have been super supportive with me, very, very kind, very respectful, which is a huge deal, for a priest, especially if you're a young priest.
Sure.
Usually you get, I don't know if I can call myself young, but, I'm fresh from the oven.
Right.
and usually, it's hard, for people, because you see these young priests or whatever, and in these parishes where I am, people have been very kind and very supportive and very respectful, and that kind of helps you to put yourself in the place that you're supposed to be, and that has been a huge blessing. And also the bishop, it's been very nice to be able to I have a problem and I call him and he's there and he answers the phone calls and he helps me out and he hears me out if I need to. Father Borja still, I'll call him every now and then, ask for help, and he'll be there for me as well. It's just very nice to have that support. The sisters as well, if you need something and you call the sisters, even though they're, loaded with work. It's amazing. I think some of them are bilocating and we just don't figure it out yet.
Yeah, no kidding, right? It's amazing.
Bilocating or something.
Yeah, no, I have my sister is a nun in Arizona, and it's just amazing. She'll tell you the things that they do in a day, and like you say, I think there must be like two of them at once or something. I don't even know. It's like with the bishop. I don't actually know how he does the amount of stuff he does. I think it can only be vaguely miraculous, and maybe it's a small miracle, but I think that it's not normal, the amount of stuff they can get done in one day. It's incredible.
No, that's probably what you would call a moral miracle. Is like perhaps there's nothing like ultra physical going on in there, but just the fact that a human person can do that is beyond the natural,
right?
For sure. But that's been quite a big blessing. And I was going to mention something else. It wasn't, how would I say that? Sensibly speaking, there wasn't much help, I could say. My first Christmas Mass was very much of a mission Mass. I didn't have a server. This was the midnight Mass. Wow. I didn't have a server. I didn't have anyone to say the answers for me. And I didn't have a choir. So it was like a very, very, pure faith, no feeling.
Sure.
I mean, there was some feeling, of course, but it was just like, I had to say my own responses. And there was a few people there, but the thing is, it's a mission parish, so many people have to travel from different places. So there wasn't many people, in there. And as I said, there's no choir. But at the same time, they really cherish that, even though you don't have those beautiful things that you have in Omaha to aid your faith. You do have the charity part, and I think that's a huge deal. When we just have, I have the parishes of Oklahoma, which is Chelsea and Oklahoma City, and I have one in Fayetteville as well. And for this Holy Week, what I did is I in my sermon, I repeatedly guilt-tripped my parish so that they would all travel to one place and be together. Guilt-tripped, I'm just kidding, but but I would say like let's try or to go to the one parish where we're going to have Holy Week so that we're all together and we get to, to live these things. So actually many of them did. They rented an Airbnb or a hotel, and they moved Thursday, Friday, and Saturday to be able to be at the ceremonies, all of us together,
Wow.
Most people from the three parishes.
Okay,
a few of them went to Omaha, and I couldn't do anything about that to guilt trip them because they're going to the bishop. So it's like, okay, well, I'll just have to, hold my peace there. But no, it was really nice. We had all the parishes together there, and we had the Holy Week. And even though it's a small parish, having everyone together and having everyone so interested, that was a huge deal. And as a new priest, I think there is several challenges, but for sure, the work that one does is just huge. It's something very, very immense, and it's kind of scary. I'll share this with people here. It's kind of scary because you realize how important it is what you do and how relevant it is. It's the salvation of souls, and you're not saving them. That's a huge thing. Is that you see God working through you, and it's not you. It's just God doing it. And the reason why I say it's scary is because you still have to save your own soul.
Sure.
So it's like you have to have this balance where you're trying to save the people, but to kind of illustrate my example or what I'm saying is, as a priest, you could be doing a lot of stuff, but because it's not you, it's God doing it through you. What really matters is how you are doing with God. If you're loving God, if you're actually doing this for the love of God, because you could be doing a lot of stuff, but it might just be that you're a good worker, but there might be love lacking. So that's the scary part as a priest, to not let yourself be deceived by the good things that God does. God is doing those things, but I still need to save my soul. I still need to love Him, and that's a big challenge, I think, for at least for a new priest, or at least for myself. to make sure that you remember that as you're busy and doing all these things for God, you need to make sure that your intention is right, that you are still loving God, and that you personally with God, you still have that loving relationship. It helps a lot to be a priest, obviously, but it's always something that you need to take care of. And that's where it's also very much appreciated that people pray for the priest and that people support the priest. Something, for example, I'm not saying money, but I'm saying, for example, helping out, when they need a place to sleep, or helping out when they need to get the parish ready for a feast or something. And also kind of keeping the place for the priest, like saying, you are a priest and I'm going to treat you as a priest. You know what I'm saying? What I mean is like, I'm not going to call the priest and take him out, to party or something like that. I'm going to treat him as a messenger, as a person sent by God. And that's a good help that parish people can give to the priest, and is very helpful for one, especially if you're a young priest or a new priest. When people treat you with that respect and dignity, it kind of puts you in that place and reminds you that it's not you and that you're doing the work for God.
Yeah, no question, Father. And I think that, as you said, everyone needs to remember to pray for all the priests, pray for the bishop, for goodness sake, pray for all of our religious. And I think that it just, you can never say it enough. And also pray for vocations, of course, too, that of all the work that needs to be done, we don't have enough people to do it, and not nearly enough people. And I think that we always need more laborers out there to help bring in the people to God, and we don't have enough as it is. And I think that as you say, I think we need to make sure we don't take our priests for granted. And I think that's a really important thing. I'd like to actually do a whole podcast about that sometime. I don't know with you, Father, but about how parishioners should act and the responsibility that each person and each family has as part of the parish, that they can't just rely on their priest to guide them in everything that is right and wrong, and to be the one, lashing the whip and making sure that they do things correctly, that we all have the responsibility to be a good parish and not just be forced into becoming a good parish by a priest. And I think that's for me, it's an extremely important topic. And I think that's one that we again, as many of the things we've talked about today, we could probably go on for an hour or so, but maybe in another show.
Yeah, for sure. And, that's kind of what we have been talking about. And what you have mentioned in your shows previously, there is a big need of education in many, many regards, and so many things. There's a big need of going back to those teachings and kind of like bringing those things home to people, because we're not used to those things. We don't see them anymore in our parishes. So we need someone to tell us, hey, you're not supposed to do this. You're actually supposed to do that, what you're mentioning. And there is, as you've said in your show before, there are so many things that we can bring out. And the more that we bring out and the more that people learn these things, the better life is going to be, and the better the easier that is going to be for us to work our salvation.
Definitely, Father. Well, I really appreciate having you on, Father. Do you have any last words you'd like to say? I would love to have you on again. I think there's plenty we could talk about in the future. Hopefully, you'll spend some time with me again. But for this podcast, do you have any last words?
No. Perhaps later on we can have another podcast on that topic. Of what we had mentioned, the project that is going on right now of trying to create more media for Catholics and trying to create precisely those things that you're talking about. That would be a good thing to talk about in the future, I think. But I really appreciate you having me, and I hope I wasn't too long or difficult to understand. But I really appreciate it. And if I said anything that needs to be well understood, I hope I don't get in trouble, as I said.
Exactly. Well, I guess, if His Excellency listens to it, or the head of the order down in Mexico, maybe I'll get some emails or something saying they need to have a talk with you. But I think you should be okay, Father.
They'll be like, oh, it's just him. We know that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, then we should be fine. No, Father, I really appreciate you coming on, and definitely, I hope to talk to you again in the future. But thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. God bless you. You have a great show, by the way. It's really good.
Thank you, Father. Appreciate that.
You've been listening to the Catholic Family Podcast. If you enjoyed this show, please share it with your friends and family. You can support the production on Patreon and PayPal, and you can reach Kevin at kevin89davis@gmail.com. Ad maiorem Dei gloriam, all for the greater glory of God.